Good evening, you're watching Estuary TV News. Coming up, we'll be taking a look back at some of the stories we've covered this week, including redevelopment in Immingham and encouragement for market stall holders in Scunthorpe. And I'll be talking to Dr. Brian Lavery about his new book, The Headscarf Revolutionaries, and he'll be taking a look at the week's local papers. Welcome to Estuary TV News. I'm Hugh Richards. First of all, it's over to Erica Barker for the news headlines.
Deputy Leader of North East Lincolnshire Council Mick Burnett has died at the age of 68. Councillor Terry Thorogood, who served with him in the Croft Baker ward, said it was devastating news, a blow to the local Labour Party as well as personally. Everyone who met Mick loved him. Councillor Burnett had suffered many years from a heart condition. Humberside Police, Hull City Council and other agencies have launched a Safe Place scheme at St Stephen's Shopping Centre. It aims to help people with learning disabilities suffering with dementia or who are vulnerable from being bullied. Stickers will be placed in windows saying if people are in distress, they can go in to ask for help.
An opportunity to protect those that are vulnerable in our community or those that really need support whilst they're in public, to find a safe place and ensure that they get the assistance they need.
People inside the premises or shops will receive training so they're aware of what to do and how to respond to people who come and seek help from them immediately.
Louth Canal is a subject of a new exhibition at the town's museum. Organised by the Louth Navigation Trust, it charts the history of the waterway from its beginning in the 1700s to the present day and the future.
The exhibition is about the past, the present and the future of the Navigation Trust. We as a trust feel that we need to have more publicity, because if people don't know we exist, then people won't back us. And so my involvement has been with the present and the future. The future looks bright. Louth Navigation is still in water, unlike a lot of canals throughout the country, which when restoration started didn't have any water in. So we still have the main ingredient.
The exhibition runs for 3 weeks and will also see a guided walk being done along the canal from Tetney Lock to Louth as part of the Lincolnshire Wolds Walking Festival. It's also the focus of the new Lingard's Lincolnshire Rambles. Well, if you do have any stories for us, you can contact us on 01472 315561. The email address is news@estuary.tv. We are also on Facebook and Twitter @estuarytv. Until next time, goodbye.
As we reported this week, Immingham has been thriving in recent years, with lots of investment bringing regeneration and major new shops to the town. The people of Immingham may have been disappointed by Tesco's failure to open, but with a new Aldi opening soon, optimism is high, as Dave Nunn discovered.
Exciting times are ahead for Immingham, which is receiving its new Aldi store as part of its wider regeneration, something which the Mayor of Immingham is excited to see come to fruition.
Oh, it's enormously exciting. We've waited so long, and since the talk of a supermarket, a big supermarket, is now 10-15 years. And obviously, with the start of the precinct and the redevelopment, and then because we've been messed about with Tesco, to have this new store behind us is fantastic.
In the past few months, many new shops have come to Immingham, something that business owners fear could affect their established local businesses.
What I can say is that the quality could be slightly better than the service.
Okay, do you think it'll affect? So you think it will affect?
It will affect initially, because everybody just goes and buys everything in one go, don't they?
But enthusiasm among the residents of Immingham for the new shops and wider regeneration is unwavering.
It definitely does, yeah. Definitely needs new stores, new investment in the town, because it is a good town really, it's just the bad ones that make it bad.
Well, it's good that we've got Aldi's coming. It's good that we've got Subways coming. I just hope that they're going to do something with that building there.
Right.
Because to be quite honest, Immingham has been promised such a lot of things for such a long time that I really hope that the regeneration will come into Immingham. It's long awaited.
Well, it's nice that we've got. It's nice that everything's getting back to normal, but it's still a big miss not getting a store where we were expecting one.
You know, it's good. Yeah, it's good. I mean, Aldi's opening Thursday. Yeah.
Okay. What
Well,
Sorry, Karen.
No, so we're happy. We've been here 40 odd years, seen the changes. Brilliant, yeah.
The regeneration is making Immingham a town on the rise, and once the empty store is filled, another step in the wider regeneration plan will be filled.
You're watching Estuary TV News. A little later, we'll have news of North Lincolnshire Council and Scunthorpe Market, and Dan Kemp will bring you all the sports news. Dr. Brian Avery from Hull has written the Headscarf Revolutionaries, a book about, well, revolutionaries and headscarves in Hull in the late 1960s. Brian, tell us more.
Well, it tells the story, as it says on the front there, of Lillian Ballocha and the Hull triple trawler disaster in 1968. Basically what happened was it was the biggest peacetime fishing disaster of the 20th century. But the story behind it was the uprising of the fishwives very suddenly. And they managed to change the shipping laws for the better, saving countless of thousands of lives to come.
Well, what was that disaster there in 68? Three trawlers went down.
Yeah, in 1968, it's now known as the Dark Winter of 1968. And what happened was that 3 ships, the Ross Cleveland, the Kingston Peridot, and the St. Romanus, sank in rapid succession, within 3 weeks, in fact. And 58 men died. 1 man survived, and his remarkable survival story is told separately in the book also. But the fact was that Lillian Ballocha was a fishwife. She worked in a fish skinning plant, and she simply one day just put down a skinning knife, picked up a petition, and with great rapidity they found themselves at the heart of power. They found themselves in Westminster. The Prime Minister, Harold Wilson, had instructed the parliamentarians to assist them because it was putting Hull on the world stage, it was putting Britain on the world stage. This is a story that took Vietnam off the front page. And Mrs. Ballocha, who led what later became known as the Headscarf Army, she suffered personally from poison pen letters and
so this was a massive political campaign in the late 1960s, sparked by the disaster, and the objectives of the campaign were?
Well, there were 4 quite disparate people. There was Lillian Ballocha, who was, as I say, a fishwife. There was Mrs. Mary Deness, who was a skipper's wife. There was Yvonne Blenkinsop, who was a cabaret singer in Hull. And there was a lady called Christine Smallbone, who was another trawlerman's wife. And the 4 of them...
A fantastic selection of characters, really, isn't it?
And they'd never met before either. But what had happened is that the local union had arranged a meeting in the Victoria Hall in Hull, to which hundreds of fishwives attended. All of the Hazel Road community were packed into this hall. As a result, these 4 women were chosen to go to London. At the time, the Prime Minister, of course, and the President of the Board of Trade, who was the Grimsby MP, Anthony Crossland, both of them were out of the country at the time. Crossland was in New Delhi, and I think Wilson was in the United States in a presidential meeting. So it really was worldwide news. And of course, with the survival of the lone survivor, Harry Edam from the Ross Cleveland, it became, if it's possible, an even bigger story.
And it is a great story. On the back I hear John Prescott, no less, has said, "Mark my words, this could become the next Maid in Dagenham." Lily Ballocha was remarkable. She and her 3 colleagues were absolute heroes. This was great popular policy making rising against the powers that be, as it were.
Oh yeah, these were, you have this phrase, ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah.
These were extraordinary people in extraordinary circumstances, thrown together entirely by fate. But this was I've used the phrase revolution because it was in 1968, which of course there was the Parisian uprisings, there was the civil rights movements
all that sort of
in
thing.
the United States, and there was riots in the streets of Britain.
How can people get hold of this remarkable book?
It's available through Barbican Press. It's on pre-order from Amazon, and we launch it on May the 26th at the Hull Maritime Museum, which is in Hull, of course, and it's on general release from June the 11th.
Brilliant. Brian, thank you very much. Don't go away, because we'll have a look at the newspapers in a moment, but this is congratulations. It's an absolutely fascinating and inspiring story.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
We won't go on about it much longer, but the general election was big news, especially in Grimsby, so we asked some Grimbarians what they thought of the result.
Yeah, actually, fingers crossed. I think the others are all good. I'm not against any of them, so I like our political system. I think we're very lucky here in this country with our democracy, so there you go, that's my take on it.
The best thing that could have happened to us, the Tories getting in.
My vote was wasted. Who I voted for didn't get in either locally or generally, so.
So you're not happy?
No, well,
he's not
going to do much, is he? So, in my opinion. Look what he's thinking of doing with the NHS and stuff.
I'm glad that Farage didn't get him. I think he's an absolute pillock. As far as Grimsby goes, well, I don't know. She's an unknown quantity. But I've always voted Labour, but I wouldn't vote Labour in the local elections here because of the cock-up they've done with all the various things.
Do you think Mel Leon, who is the UMP, has hard shoes to fill after Austin Mitchell's departure?
Yeah, she's got a lot to fill. I mean, he was a character, but he did put a lot of things forward for Grimsby.
I just hope that they're going to do something different to what they've already done, because at the moment it isn't very good at all. There's people that, obviously there's too many people relying on food banks and things, and they need to do something more about that and help the people lower down than the ones that are higher up.
In Grimsby's Labour through and through, innit? But I mean, the Tories have another chance to get, they've made good progress, and it seems silly not to let them have another go, really, don't it?
Markets used to be at the centres of our communities, but now they've often been replaced by supermarkets, anonymous monsters, parts of international chains. North Lincolnshire Council is fighting back, offering money off to new stall holders at Scunthorpe local market, and one stall holder is determined to involve his customers. Richard Morris has more.
Love Your Local Market fortnight starts tomorrow, and in Scunthorpe it's already receiving good praise from stall holders. Paul Potter, who owns a card stall and Potter's auction house, is very supportive of the new investment to encourage new stall holders.
We started on here 32 years ago with our card stall, and it was just a hobby at the time because we was working at the steelworks and was always under threat of redundancy and one thing and another. So we took it on as a hobby, and we really loved it, and we still do. We've been doing it all this time. We've got great customers. We know them all by name. We watch the children grow up, and yeah, it's great. It's a good thing. We still get loyal customers come to the market. They know the value when they see it, they know a bargain. It's mostly the older generation because the younger generation haven't really twigged onto the market yet, but I think when they do, they'll realise what a good place it can be.
While Paul is keen on the new venture, he thinks it has been a long time coming.
Well, for a long time I think it's fair to say the council have maybe neglected the market. It's not just here but in all towns because they're old fixtures and fittings. But I think at Scunthorpe now they've twigged on to what they've got here and they're really trying to help and make a difference. So yeah, we've got a good team here and they're really trying hard.
And moving from selling cards to an auction house are two quite different businesses.
They are. Well, I've always been interested in collectibles and vintage things from an early age. I used to go to local auctions and they've dwindled one by one because of eBay and online auctions and one thing and another. And the last one closed in Scunthorpe last August, unfortunately. So I thought there's a gap in the market, we'll give it a try.
Dr. Brian Avery is still with me, and he's going to help me go through the newspapers from this week. Brian, what did you find first? Something rather appropriate to your interest in trawlers.
Well, and my interest in newspapers, because as you know, I was a journalist before I went into academia.
Yep.
I'm a hackademic.
You're a hackademic.
And this story
strange
here, hybrid.
Indeed.
This story here is from the Hull Daily Mail, which was my old paper in the 1980s, a news editor back in the day. And it's a story about a friend of mine from Hull University, Dr. Rob Robinson, who's written a book about the Viola, which is the last surviving steam trawler, and surviving just very loosely there. It's laying in South Georgia in the South Atlantic for 50 years. It's basically
show the pictures. Well, here we are, yeah.
But we're hoping to get it back home, and if anybody can do that, Dr. Rob Robinson's a very fellow. He's a very enthusiastic teacher of history and a very enthusiastic writer of same. And his interest.
And she's appearing on stamps?
Yes, indeed, yeah. It'd be commemorated. That's it. The story is the commemoration of it in stamps as as the last surviving steam trawler. But the story behind it, of course, is that they want to try and get it back home. Back to Hull, and of course, steam trawlers. It sounds like something Dickens. But the steam trawler was still in operation as late as the 1950s
Yeah,
and 60s.
sure.
You know.
And the fact that she's lying in South Georgia, down further away than the Falklands Islands, down in the Southern Ocean, just shows how far the range of those Humber trawlers were.
Yeah, I mean, well, indeed. I mean, in the book I've written as well, the trawlers, of course, were in Iceland, and one of the trawlers from Grimsby, the Notts County, which perished on the same night, run aground the same night as the Ross Cleveland perished, was bought for scrap, and it was bought for scrap by a local Icelandic entrepreneur who's now the biggest trawler owner in that area.
Yep.
And it all started with a piece of.
It would be wonderful to get her
back
back, because there's museum ships. We're losing them too fast. We've got the Ross Tiger, of course, not a steam trawler in Grimsby, but to be able to just imagine being on those rough old, tough old vessels again.
And I hope as well that Hull gets the Viola back. I mean, it's a bit of a pipe dream, really, in time for 2017, because this is, the city of culture. It's not all about plays and poetry and. That is
the trawlers are part of Hull's culture.
It's part of Hull's culture, indeed.
What's next? What have you got now? A story about a bank?
I mean, bankers get a bad rap, deservedly so, and they're going to get even more from the people of Driffield. This is in the Driffield Times and Post. The Yorkshire Bank's announced. I mean, normally when you hear a banking story, you think crashes of money, millions of pounds. This is the sort of story that local papers exist to tell you. The Yorkshire Bank's announced that its branch in Driffield Marketplace is to close. And that's just a stroke of a pen somewhere in London, and the poor people of Marketplace in Driffield are left high and dry, a bit like the trawler in the South Atlantic.
Is the Yorkshire Bank based in London? It sounds a little bit more local than that.
Well, yeah, they may well be based in Leeds. Stroke of a pen in Leeds. A Leeds pen as opposed to, maybe it should be a pencil lead instead of a pen.
You are once a sub-editor, you never stop, do you?
Sadly, that's the case. I nearly split an infinitive there.
Go on. Anyway, so the problem is that Driffield Bank's closing.
And of course, they do this so casually and think that they can just replace it with a cash point machine. There's no people there. It's the fact that people seem to have just disappeared out of service now.
Well, it's the fact that banking especially is all done either by automated telephone lines or through the computer, through the internet. Yeah. And there's no such thing as a proper bank manager anymore.
Well, that's it. I mean, it's like the Little Britain sketch, isn't it? Computer says no.
Yeah.
Many people do you know have torn their hair out trying to get through to a bank?
There are one or two very small banks that still do it, but to give them credit.
Like the ill-fated one in Driffield.
What's next? What have you got now?
I picked this one up from the Grimsby Telegraph, and basically politicians, a bit like bankers, take a lot of grief.
They do.
And there's a gentleman called Steve Besant.
Yes.
I believe a Liberal Democrat candidate for Grimsby.
He's an old friend of Estuary TV. He's appeared here before.
And I can see why. He comes across as a thoroughly nice chap. And there's thousands of people on Twitter agree. I'm reasonably new to the world of Twitter. I'm a late addition to the Twitterati, and on the insistence of my publisher and the BBC. Am I allowed to mention BBC here?
Yeah, you are.
They made me go on Twitter because
a bigger organisation than us. They're not necessarily better.
I'd done some writing for them, and they made me go on Twitter to plug it, basically. Now this is a great use of social media by this man, Mr. Besant.
Well, Steve Besant, I've interviewed him several times, and he is the nicest fellow you can possibly imagine. He's not at all like the horrible, cynical politician. But then on the other hand, when you interview all these politicians, none of them are horrible, cynical politicians. All through this general election, they've all turned out to be rather admirable and sincere and benevolent and intelligent people.
You see, I heavily suspect that Mr. Besant's probably not just pleasant in the 7 days running up to the vote. I suspect the other 349 days, or 59 days of the year, he's a gentleman as well.
He's a wonderful man, yes.
But whereas the politicians that you come across probably.
No, they're not. Let's not be cynical about it. One more story. One more story, very quickly.
This is again from the Grimsby Telegraph, and they have a thing called Younger Reporter, and
yes.
Of course, again, it breaches. News and education.
Quickly in 10 seconds.
Rihanna Hewitt, aged 10, if you're the young should have a political voice, she says. In 2010, only 60% of the UK voted in the general election, and she goes on to tell us why the voice of youth should be heard. And with an eloquent voice like Rihanna Hewitt's, I think it's
There's
got a future.
hope for
I think
the future.
I think that story's got legs, as they used to say in the Yankee film.
Brian, thank you very
You're
much
very
indeed.
welcome.
Here's the sport with Dan Kemp.
Grimsby Town face a further season in the Conference League after failing to win at Wembley at the weekend. The Mariners lost to Bristol Rovers 5-3 in a penalty shootout. Hull City lost to Tottenham away 2-0 thanks to second-half goals. The result means that Steve Bruce's side now need to beat Manchester United on the final day of the season to stand any chance of staying up in the Premier League. In cricket, in the Readers Lincolnshire ECB Premier League, Louth topped the 300 mark in their match against Grimsby Town. But Grimsby Town's batting improvement continued, with new signing Michael Brown making 69 and Joe Farmery 63 as the visitors hung on to their final wicket to earn a draw with 226 for 9. Market Deeping halted Market Raisin's winning run, posting 241 for 9 after David Gillett celebrated his birthday with a knock of 104. Having lost the final wickets on 7, Gillett and Alex Wheatley added 97 and Gillett added 57 for the 7th wicket with Mahal added tier. It does leave Market Raisin third in the table. And at the Northwest 200 Superbike race, local riders Guy Martin and Gary Johnson both finished in disappointing positions. Martin ended the race in 8th and Johnson was in 9th. The winner was Alistair Seeley, who gained his 15th victory, which equals the record of Robert Dunlop. And that's all from the sport.
Thanks very much, Dan. That's all we have time for. Just time, though, to remind you, The Headscarf Revolutionaries by Brian Lavery. It is available on Amazon and it's published by Bearcan?
Barbican Press.
Written too small for me.
Barbican Press.
If you have a story for us, please go to Facebook or Twitter pages. Details on the screen. Email news@estuary.tv or phone Grimsby 3155553. Emma's back next week. From me for now, goodbye.
Estuary TV's weather, sponsored by Hornsby's, celebrating 100 years in buses.
Hello and welcome to Estuary TV's weather. Tuesday's looking to have sunny spells and scattered showers, some of which will be heavy, with a chance of hail and thunder. Feeling rather cool again, maximum temperature of 13 degrees. It'll feel cool and breezy on Wednesday with sunshine and showers, some heavy, perhaps thundery.
Estuary TV's weather, sponsored by Hornsby's, celebrating 100 years in buses.